Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. This is the show where we answer your questions about movies, TV shows, comic books, and so much more. I'm your host, DJ Wooldridge. With me, as always, come hell or high water, fire and wind, is Roxy Stryer. Hey, Roxy.
Man, hell or high water sounds better right now.
Yeah. So, listen, we're here. We did a little talk about the fires in the pre-show for the Patreon. We'll see if that makes it in the main episode, but I'm hoping when this episode drops 3 days later, it'll be a completely different scenario and it'll be a lot less relevant.
My God. If we're still saying we don't know when this is over in 3 days, I don't know that okay.
Yeah. So we're going to hope, fingers crossed, knock on wood, we're going to hope that stuff is more pertinent, more timely when this was recorded as opposed to when it went up. But what I can tell you is that by the time this goes up, there will be a lot of services and ways to help the people affected by the fires. So stay tuned for all of that. Keep an eye out for that stuff. But today we're going to focus on something a little bit lighter. I guess as entertainment-wise, Squid Game's not that much lighter. We're talking about Squid Game, everybody. That's the thing we're going to be talking about in the main show. But first, as always, we're going to do a little business up top. As always, if you want to watch this show live, if you want to check it out early, ad-free, check out Patreon exclusive shows like What We're Into and Mutant Academy, you can do that over at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. Also, if you want to give us 5 stars on iTunes, that's right. You can do that, please and thank you. And we'll also read your comments from the YouTube videos and on Spotify. You can leave comments. So,
DJ, why did you question 5 stars?
5 stars on iTunes. I was like, is that the rating? Am I mixing up my rating? Nope, iTunes is 5 stars. That's the one.
You said no, like you didn't want them to give us 5
no,
stars.
No. I want 5 stars. I want 5 stars. My question is is iTunes is that where you give the 5 stars, or is it no? YouTube's a like and subscribe. Do that too.
I was ready for you to be like, no, 4.5.
4.5. No, this is going to be a 4.5 episode, everybody. We're doing the best we can.
Mentally, I am 4 out of 10 stars here.
But you know what? We're muscling through. This is the definition of the show must go on. Here's some comments we got from our previous video, and I believe this was the top 10 TV shows of the year. Handsome Ransom, who is a member, thank you, says 2024 was the year I discovered OSA, so my number 1 spot goes to you guys. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
We love Handsome Ransom.
Kofny, Kofny, says, I was just about to comment Arcane, but then you mentioned it, laughing my ass off. Season 1 seems to be the consensus for the cleaner and more solid season, but I think I liked season 2 much more, felt much more emotional to me. The music was phenomenal, and the animation visuals stepped up from 11 to 10 to 12 to 10. Overall, it was beautiful and to a beautiful show. I will say I literally just finished watching season 2 of Arcane. This has been a hectic week, but I will have to evaluate whether it cracks my top 10, but it was very good. The ending was very good.
I have not seen one person prefer Arcane season 2 to season 1.
Yeah, I think season 1, here's the thing, Roxy, I think season 1 is better. I think season 2 is very good, but it feels like there's been a lot of articles about how expensive a show Arcane was, and it definitely feels like they fit 2 to 3 seasons of story into season 2, and they manage it well, but there is some of a little like, hey, we got to wrap this up. We spent too much money on the show. We got to wrap this thing up. And then over on the Spotify side, this is to an episode. If you go to my personal channel, you can watch Slash Pick that I do with Adam Plavic. On Christmas Day, we posted our discussion about Black Christmas. And Juan E. Bellardi, I hope I got that right. Great horror stories aren't just about what scares you. They're about what scares the characters the most. Here, as in Black Christmas, a house full of young women is invaded by a conservative father, a selfish boyfriend, sexist cops, and a perverted psychopath. Their worst nightmares. Genius. I will say I had not even heard, I knew of Black Christmas, but I'd never watched it before Slash Pick. And it was really good, and it's also a good, it's surprisingly influential. It had a huge impact on Halloween, which obviously had a huge impact on other slasher movies going forward. So I recommend you watch that, our discussion about that on my personal channel, and you watch the movie, because it is a good little slasher movie. Grayson Bullock says in the chat, love Slash Pick. Tell your friends, it doesn't get the views reviews I want. I love Flashback 2. I wish it had better reviews. Okay. So now
it takes time to grow something beautiful. DJ, you've got this.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so
unless you're in the fires, and then it takes no time at all.
Yeah. Speaking of, I'm still getting notifications. Hold on.
It is so truly. I have to say, I am here and I am with you, and I'm so grateful for the distraction. But I am distracted from the distraction because every 2 minutes, for you guys who are not in LA, you don't know.
Yeah.
It is like you just saw a new fire popped up, contained to 1 acre. Looking at where it is, it's every few minutes that you get something.
Yeah.
And yet, slash pick, baby.
And now we're jumping over to news very briefly. Roxy, I don't know if you saw this, but Mr. Jason Momoa. Fans might know him as Aquaman. They might know him as Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones. His time with the DC universe has not come to an end because he has been recast as Lobo for Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. There's a quote for him: "I collect comics. I don't do much anymore, but Lobo was always my favorite, and I always wanted to play Lobo because I'm like, hello, it's the perfect role." And he said that if DC called, it'd be like a fuck yeah moment. And then he posted that comment, and then beneath it he's like, they called, and it's like, yeah, duh, yes, yeah, of course. Why did we even bother casting as Aquaman? Yes, Lobo. What are we doing?
It's so funny because this is the only time I ever feel like the internet really got it right in terms of immediately, 2 years ago, everybody was like, this man's probably going to end up playing Lobo.
Mm-hmm.
Even before he was cast as Aquaman, people were like, I think he's going to be Lobo.
Yeah.
Then after he was cast as Aquaman and currently cast as Aquaman, people were like, but really, I think he's Lobo.
Yeah.
And then the second that they announced that they were wiping the old DCU, everybody was like, no, yeah, he's going to come back as Lobo.
Yeah.
And then when they announced it, it was a little anticlimactic because it was yeah, no, we all know.
Yeah,
we've all known for a decade he was Lobo.
Yeah, I think it's perfect casting. I would be very interested to see. I think Lobo is a type of character that fits James Gunn's what we typically understand of his, his way of doing stuff. Obviously, he's not the one directing Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. I am a little like. Having him be in the Supergirl movie, it kind of feels like maybe I'm worried that maybe they don't have that much confidence in Supergirl on her own. So it's like, well, maybe if we throw in a Jason Momoa as Lobo, that'll sweeten the pot. And it's like, I'm excited for that. I'm not against it. I just, I don't know. I don't want to steal Supergirl's thunder.
What do you think their relationship in the movie is going to be?
I would say at this point we don't know how much of the movie is going to be. The comic book this is based on, he is not in. However, Tom King, who wrote the graphic novel that this movie is going to be based on, did say originally he was supposed to be in it. So I would say probably confrontational. I would also watch that buddy cop movie. Supergirl teams up with Lobo to do a thing because their personalities seem so different. I always thought it would be cool to, in the Supergirl show with Melissa Benoist, I was like, Lobo would be a great foil for Supergirl in that. It's just one of those, I don't know. It just feels like, again, I just don't want to, I don't want to steal any thunder from Supergirl.
Who's the big bad in Supergirl?
I actually don't know. I haven't read the graphic novel. I don't know that, you guys can correct me in the comments. I don't think it's like a marquee name, like it's not a Brainiac or whatever in the comic itself.
And so I feel like maybe that is why, because usually think about Superman, right?
Yeah.
We have a name like Lex Luthor, and we even have a name like Lois, and plus in Superman we have a bunch of other names as well.
Yeah.
But nobody's sitting there saying oh, because you cast Nicholas Hoult, you don't have faith in Superman.
Yeah.
That's
true. If he's supposed to be, you're right. I mean, if he's supposed to be the antagonist, I assumed kind of like frenemy.
But even if he's not, I don't think anybody's saying just because you cast Rachel Brosnahan doesn't mean those are two bigger actors than Superman is.
Yeah.
So I think they could absolutely have faith. But I hear you as somebody who, when we did all of the Flash, the Arrowverse I was like, what was that thing called again that we did every day of our lives?
Yeah.
When we covered the Arrowverse, you were a big Arrow person, Sam was a big Flash person, and I was a diehard Supergirl girl.
Yeah.
And so I really like Supergirl. I love Melissa Benoist. I like Sasha Kaye. I am excited to see this new iteration, but I don't want anything to outshine Supergirl, of course. But I think she works well with others, and I think that she's kind of a beast, and I don't think anybody's going to be able to outshine her.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see. I do think this is obviously meant to like lay the seeds for a Lobo movie. Like, this isn't going to be the last. I would love to see Superman throw down with Lobo at some point. I would be very down for that.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Wait, Mike Joyce in the chat said Millie Alcock is Supergirl. I know that. Did I say anything that made it sound like I didn't know that?
Did we leave you the impression that we didn't? That's the other interesting thing, is that we've got a House of the Dragon alum with a Game of Thrones alum.
Ooh,
but they didn't share any.
Yeah. Maybe he meant like Millie Alcock is Supergirl.
Yeah.
You know how people say that?
Yeah.
You know?
She's a star on her own. This is good casting. I like Lobo as a character. I was on Sal's show on Comic Pop Returns, and we talked about how like doing a Lobo movie would be the perfect opportunity to bring Zack Snyder back. Like, Zack, come do a Lobo movie, man. This guy fits you better than any of the other DC characters. You can make it as much like the Heavy Metal magazine as you want. Go for it, dude. We won't stop you.
You said you didn't know. I didn't say that, man.
We knew.
I know so little, and that's one of the things I do know. Don't take it from me.
But yeah, so I'm excited for that. I believe. Wow, I don't have that in front of me. I want to say Supergirl's supposed to come out in 2026. But yeah, stay tuned. Let's look it up. So stay tuned for more Supergirl.
I have a completely off topic question.
Yeah, hit me.
Because as I was Xing out of the fires to look at Supergirl stuff, you know how when there's horrible events that happen in the world and then we don't see the media that it does those, like for example the episode of Punisher that they cut because there was the school shooting and things like, do you think that there's anything coming out that has like a city burning that's like, no, we can't drop this right now?
I don't think so. But we might not know. We might not. We'll
Supergirl,
retroactively say that's why Batgirl was shelved, because Firefly was the villain in that. So
and they predicted.
it.
Supergirl, June 26, 2026. Pre-pro begins in January 2025, which is right now.
Yeah. Well, it's probably in another part of the world than we're in, so that might not be affected. We'll see about that. But speaking of things that are timely, let's talk about Squid Game Season 2. My wife and I were able to watch this over the break. We'll talk a little bit about Season 2. We'll also talk about our speculation for Season 3. A little unclear whether I should be referring to it as Squid Game 2, because that's how the title card lists it, or whether I should be referring to it as Squid Game Season 2. But Roxy, did you see, you know this Squid Game? Have you heard about this Squid Game stuff?
Once or twice heard about it. Man, I don't care what people say, and some people seem mixed on this. I can't wait to talk about this.
Yeah. It was one. You wonder, because it's been, I think Squid Game Season 1, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that came out 2020. That was like a pandemic show, and one might argue that that helped. You know, we were all, because I've heard that argument a lot with Tiger King, which I don't know. I think Tiger King's wild enough that it might have found its niche anyway.
I don't know. I think Tiger King, though, we were home in the house and we're in the house bored. Like it's just like it was just so precious of a show for that time and nothing was coming out. But for Squid Game, September 17th, 2021, it all dropped. Okay. I think that the reason why this show during the pandemic was even more successful is that I don't trust American audiences to watch a foreign language show. Yeah,
I think you might be right, but so I wondered. So 2021, so it's been 3 years, and so there's a wonder, like, can it? I was wondering, like, will it get me back? And boy, howdy it did. And I will say, and I don't know that we're ready to talk about this yet. But in a lot of ways, it felt even more timely, and I will dive into this later. Every election scene was brutal. In the year of our Lord 2024, brutal.
I like the way you say brutal, and it does emphasize how absolutely brutal.
Brutal. It's just each one I'm like, this hurts. It hurts me to watch because fine, you know what? I'll dive into it now. I'll just go into my thoughts on, because that was the part that I really like. I need to talk to people about these election scenes, because that's my big takeaway of this season was, so for people that are not familiar with Squid Game, basically a bunch of people that are down on their luck, desperate for money, are recruited to play this game that they are unaware they're supposed to play a coterie of childhood, like red light, green light, games like that. What they don't know when they first sign up is that this is a game for their lives. If you lose, you die. And then I really think the way the show constructs this reality is incredibly dialed in to our current moment. Obviously, it's a South Korean show, but I feel like it very much reflects our situation over here, where there's the illusion.
More so in season 2.
I can't. Well, I don't. It hit me more in season 2 than in season 1. And because the contestants are presented with the illusion of democratic choice. They're like, well, hold on a second. If you don't want to participate, just hold an election, and whichever side gets the most votes, you don't either keep playing the games or you don't. Of course, the situation is engineered where these people are incredibly desperate, and you only get a certain amount. You're promised like this huge pot, but as the game goes on and more people die, the pot becomes bigger, which motivates people to want to keep playing. Now, I will say, I honestly, if this were a real thing that happened, I honestly don't think 50, if you didn't know that you were playing a life or death game and suddenly a bunch of people are killed in front of you, I think most people's just animal instinct would be like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
That in reality. But within the structure of the show, they do a good job of explaining why these people might not feel this way. And
desperation, I mean, like, I do see, especially like you said, comparing it to here, I didn't one time think this is unrealistic that these people want to stay. Not one part of me was like, this would never happen, that people would want to stay after seeing what it means to stay.
Yeah.
It felt like our society, DJ.
Because I think the part that it reflects is this idea, this notion that, and the thing that they play on is this idea, well, I'm special. You know what I mean? Like, the trick, and I think the great trick of Squid Game that I think is very revealing about the ethos of the show is that they are kids' games. So these people are like, well, these are kids' games. We played them as kids. They're simple. And the part they don't think about is they're also not skill-based. Most of them are basically like a flip a coin. You know what I mean? Luck-based. Like, are you able to, you know what I mean? Like, they're not, it's not like, it doesn't require, it looks simple because it's not skill-based, but because it's not skill-based, who wins and who loses is kind of random based on how are you feeling that day? What's going on?
Pair up by numbers.
Yeah.
Like, join groups of 2 or 3.
Yep.
I mean, I guess you could claim it's skill-based by 10%.
Yeah.
But that's about it. Or like using the origami to hit the
other one. It's like there's one point like, do it this way because that helped me. Yeah, that's kid game shit. And it's like when you're like playing Pokemon as a kid, you're like, if you hold down these buttons, it'll make sure that you catch the Pokemon. No, it doesn't. It just feels like you do. It just feels like it's doing something. Completely. And so, and I think one of the best, so they do multiple of these elections. And I think the one that's most revealing is there's this one like rich guy that lost everything. And I'm trying to take myself, obviously a lot's happened this week. So I'm trying to put myself back into that moment, but it's this
into a better time, dude.
Into a better time, not for these people in the show, but he's like, if we play one more, because that's how they always get themselves. That's the other thing that's worth noting is a lot of these people lost their money from gambling. And
that was really smart that they did that too.
Yeah. So he's like, if we keep playing, basically like if we play one more game, we'll lose more people, so we'll get more money. But of course it's kid games, so like we won't lose. And it's like, what are you because you're simultaneously arguing that we should play one more because we'll lose people and we'll make more money. But also, why would we lose? They're simple games. It's like, yeah, You just said the premise of your argument is that more people will die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're contradicting yourself. And that that I think the part of it that really sunk into me is that because each election they win or lose by like a vote. And so now 50% of the group of people that does not want to be there is now stuck playing this game. And it's like, this sucks. This fucking blows, man.
Yeah, that was maybe the most relatable part about it all.
Yeah. Yep. Now we're stuck with it. Great.
When you're in a democracy and you do live by majority rules.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're playing in a system where you're given the illusion of choice, even though the system's been rigged against you.
And
literally
being explained.
Literally, because what the characters don't know is that one of the players is the guy that runs things.
And one of the players is somebody who's played before, and they know that at some point,
Yeah.
but they actually don't ever really know that.
Yeah. Yes.
They are being told that by that person.
And they get the wrong, and a lot of them learn the wrong lesson from that. Like, well, he won. Again, it's this main character syndrome. Well, he won. Yeah, he was one of 400. What was he? Yeah, he's 456 of 456 people. Do the math. Do the math in your head.
And it's so interesting how the entire time they keep saying to each other, we can get to the end. We can get to the end. And it's like, by nature, are you guys acknowledging that only one of you will win if you keep doing this?
Yes.
But they keep thinking, well, we can back out any time. So it won't just be one of us.
Yeah.
Which I think was a really smart thing that they did this season as opposed to last.
Yeah.
Because we are seeing more quote unquote teamwork because they believe that they, okay, if we get down to the top 5, top 10, 15, then we could all be together. We could all get a lot of money. As opposed to last year where we did see, not last year, 4 years ago.
Yeah. Last season. Yeah.
Everyone was more cutthroat. This time there are some people who are a little less cutthroat because also they can decide to leave even though they cannot.
Yeah.
So it just gave us a completely different group of people and like ways that they're trying to go about this, which I think is really what this show needed for its season 2 in order to repeat the same beats.
Yeah. I think the other thing the show, my wife observed this and I think it was really really true that we'd forgotten from the first one, is how tense the show is able to make you feel with even before the game start, because we got I don't know the name of the guy that like recruits people, the recruiter, let's call him, and he recruits people into a game of Russian roulette, and you're like, oh my fucking god, this is so tense. And they do a good job of, once you get into the games, like, there's the people you don't like, but there's so many people you do like, and you're like, wow, this is gonna suck when they die. That's gonna be really hard. And it does a good job of our lead guy really selling what a PTSD nightmare this would have to be. Like, again, wait, hold on, how did I get into this again?
When he is in the limo, in the car, or whatever that car is, going there, and you think he's got the tooth.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and as a viewer, you absolutely know 100%, if you've been paying attention, there is no way this tracker is going to track them to him. Yeah. There's 0% chance that this is going to work. The amount of anxiety I felt, and that was early days.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't know. And when we finally get to the first game, this is full spoiler. Yeah. Finally get to the first game. And this man, right before everything starts, pulls out his tooth and sees there is no tracker. Yeah. I was like, even though I knew, I was like, no. Yeah. Like and that was setting the tone for the entire thing. Like, you are stranded. They cannot find you. They have not been able to find, this is just so tense.
Yeah. And just the way, I think you're right. Focusing on the teamwork aspect, focusing on the election aspect. And another smart thing, they give you a goddamn patch to show how you voted.
So, I mean, first of all, obviously, as a Jew, and the minute I think patches, I'm like, oh my God, there's us and them. Yep. It's othering people, which is throughout history, never put on a patch. Somebody asks you to wear a patch. Yeah. I'm not wearing that.
Lose the patch. Run. Lose it.
Vote to leave if there is a patch scenario.
Yeah.
But watching this, it's so smart because when you're talking to somebody, even if it's somebody you haven't met yet or somebody you know, you can't forget it.
Yeah.
They are making me be here.
Yeah.
Or they want to leave. Just what a way to divide them. And also, obviously, for us as viewers, when there's so many characters, and you're like, wait, what did they? Just always, I know exactly what you did.
Where they stand,
and also, another brilliant throw off by them. Of course, we know the guy is being sketchy. He knows our lead dude's name. He kills somebody in that room.
Yeah.
Of course, we know that he's sketchy. But it was interesting because when he voted to stay there.
Yeah.
And you think you know, when he explains himself, he's like, listen, if I see these people on the street, they would all try to kill me because look at how many there are. And in my mind, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. They did such a good job with player one, who is, I think the character's identified as the face man. He's the guy that wears he's the guy that runs things. We saw him last season. There's so many. And this is some of the really smart storytelling of the show. There's so many times where you see a shot of him or whatever, and it's like, you don't know what he's thinking. What is he thinking? What's going on in there? My favorite moment, and I want to see your thoughts on it, is there's a team game where you have to play a series of kids games, and he's on this team, and
the track one?
Yeah, the track one, where he has to throw the top, and he keeps fucking it up. And then you think like, wait, is he doing this on purpose? And then he starts to flip out. And I'm like, wait a second, maybe he's not doing this on purpose. And he's like, hold on a second, I might actually, I'm losing the thread here a little bit.
What's interesting, I love that moment too, but I've thought a lot about this after the show, after the finale or the mid-season finale, whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
Because there's also that moment where in the numbers game, you have to split off in numbers.
Yeah.
He goes into a room and there's somebody else in there, and he goes and gets his friend and brings him in and then kills that other person.
Yeah.
When he just as easily could have shot his friend out.
Yeah.
And kept the other person alive.
Yeah.
But he wants his friend in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, is he actually growing attached to any of these people? Or does he have to keep them alive for some reason?
Yeah.
Because it did seem like until the moment that he ends up killing that guy, that same person that ends up in the room with him at the very end, he needed these people alive or wanted them alive longer. And he does get the top thing. You know, he ends up doing it.
So. Yeah, that's a good point. I think because the implication is that the final so the season ends with a big major assault, which is a really exciting sequence. That's a really well done sequence where they're kind of trying to, in vain, and you know it's in vain. Like, this isn't going to work to try and take down the people in charge. But
it's still impressive and intense, even though you know it's not going to work. For some reason, you're still completely invested.
Well, and they do a good job too, because they pay off little things. Like there's a character that's trans, and you find out her backstory. She was a soldier, and that ends up mattering. And then there's a character that says they're a soldier, and then I'm not being. You know what I mean? It all kind of pays off in that final run. The language he uses around at the bad guy is like, this is another game. Like, this is another game, and it's specifically for the main guy. Sorry, I don't remember any of the characters' names. I apologize.
Me neither.
I should have had them in front of me, but again,
because they don't use them often.
Yeah,
because they go by their numbers.
4, 5, 6. Yeah, 4, 5, 6. So 001 talks about it as if it's a game for 4, 5, 6 of kind of to break his will, which it's ambitious. It's a little ambitious gambit. But I like, to your point, to that point, I like the ambiguity of it, because there's so many lingering and that actor's so good. You're like, what is going on? Is he thinking, wow, this seemed like a good idea, but I might actually die in this? Or is he 10 steps you know what I mean? Because this isn't the first time player one has been an inside person.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, and I don't think until the next season we're really going to know what he is up to. Obviously, we know what he's up to.
Yeah.
But what and why? Just so many follow-up questions. And I am curious too, and I guess we'll never know the answer to this, but say the vote went, let's go home.
Yeah.
I don't feel like they were going to let them go home.
Yeah. It could have been a situation. Wait, isn't this how it played out? Where it's like, yeah. You're totally going to get to go home tomorrow after you spend the night with the other people that want to stay.
That was because it was a tie.
Yeah, it was because of tie. But I wonder if that same scenario would have played out if it hadn't been a tie. Like, yeah, you just spend one more night here. No, don't worry.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm just super curious. Like at some point, what my thought process was, oh, they are going to vote to go home, and then they're going to kill everybody who voted to go home, and that was the game.
Mm-hmm.
Or something.
Oh yeah, like, maybe. Yeah.
Like, well, because I just this show causes you to be paranoid of everybody and everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't trust because they're saying you can go home. I feel like that's the game.
Yeah, I think what it does a really good job of, obviously it's a really heightened scenario. It does a good job of showing how authoritarian systems utilize democracy, like the illusion of democracy, to maneuver people where they want to go, and how it's like it feels like you have a choice. That's how they keep you from doing what they do at the end, which is attacking the whole situation.
Right, but when you don't have all the knowledge or understand even what the choice you're making is, because you don't even know the grasp of the situation, then it's not really choice.
Exactly, and the other thing too is that the little touches, like the weird Escher maze that is the base, seems like just a weird aesthetic choice. But then when the assault's happening, you're like, well, no, this is because now nobody really knows where they're going.
Yeah. Totally.
So even that is effective. Grayson Bullock in the comments asked, have you seen the movie Battle Royale? I have. I love it. I think it's great. Roxy, you might want to, if you like Squid Game, you might want to check out Battle Royale.
Am I an idiot in thinking, isn't that a James Bond movie?
No, Casino Royale is what you're thinking. Oh, Battle Royale is a Japanese. It's a Hunger Games before Hunger Games. A bunch of teens are sent to an island and they have to fight to the death situation. So
it's a Japanese foreign language film.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s.
Is it as good as Squid Game?
It's fantastic. It's really good. Obviously, it's a movie as opposed to a show, so there's not as much room.
Japanese, not Korean, but
not for Korean, but there's not as much room to like dive into people and their backstories. Speaking of, you mentioned season 3. Variety was talking to the creator of the show, and he said, I believe we will be announcing the launch date for season 3 soon. I probably expect that the launch around summer or fall of next year. So that would be 2025, the year we're in. But as for the storyline of the 3rd season, Ji-hun, having lost everything, including his best friend, and all the attempts going to failure, it's now, what is it going to be like? What state is Ji-hun going to be in, and what will he choose to do? Will he continue with the mission? Is he going to give up or persist? And so you're going to meet our character Ji-hun at a very critical crossroads as we begin the 3rd season. Ji-hun will not be the same man he was in season 2. Worth pointing out, I think it's credit to this actor and the creative team. Roxy, you've probably seen the meme of like when they take the picture and he smiles in season 1 and this one he's so serious, and it's like and his friend comments on it like, you feel like a different guy. It's like, yeah, he does.
Yeah, obviously.
He feels like a different person.
That was interesting when you're reading though, because it's like, are you going to give up or persist? And it's like, what choice does this man have?
Yeah,
like he can't just say, no, I tap out, I'm gonna go now.
Yeah,
like that's not on the table. I want to ask you, because this seemed to be the main topic of conversation, and they're bringing it up a little bit by talking about the next season. But the main topic that I was seeing on the social media platforms is that this ended way too abruptly, and that people were really surprised, and that this wasn't a full season of television, and they didn't feel like it had a full arc. How did you feel about the final episode, and are you okay with it, knowing that there's another season or part of the season coming? I
think if I had to wait another 3 years, that might be frustrating. And maybe it's because, I don't watch these. I don't sit and watch the whole Netflix show in a day. You know what I mean? Like we used to do for the show and stuff like that. I watch it at my own pace. So at that point, I'd already seen like the ending abrupt, whatever. Not knowing what it was, but knowing that was kind of the reaction. So maybe that colors my view of it. But I mean, we used to end shows on cliffhangers. Like Smallville, every season would end on a cliffhanger. We used to end seasons on cliffhangers. That's been a thing.
I felt like it was less of a cliffhanger and more of like didn't finish what this, the first one is a complete, we started and we finished, even though we kind of leave on a cliffhanger of where's he going to go.
Yeah.
We started and finished the game.
Yeah.
And this one, we don't finish the game.
Yeah.
Although I would argue we kind of do.
Yeah, we finished this. It felt like a culmination of like the big assault on it. This didn't feel like Game of or House of the Dragon this previous season where it's like, and everybody's marching off to the the end. Yeah.
Right. But people were saying it was abrupt. And I hear what they're saying because it was a lot of like kind of hurry up and wait. And then when we get to this, it's like, oh my God, here we are. And then it's done.
Yeah.
But I actually really liked that. And I'm with you that, we don't have to wait forever. But we didn't know that when they dropped this.
Yeah.
They didn't drop this and say like, by the way, this is, even though we're going to call the next one season 3, it's really part 2 of season 2. And we are going to be dropping it in 2025. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
So immediately I'm Googling like what, when, who, what, and there was nothing until like a week later.
This feels less brutal. Speaking of Arcane, this feels less brutal than the cliffhanger of the first season of Arcane, where I thought there was like another episode, and like it ends with like one character launching a rocket at a bunch of other characters, and you're like, oh shit, next episode. Wait, there isn't one? Wait, this show is already, by the time I watch it, this show's already been off the air for like 2 years, and there's going to be at least one more for the next season. What? what? So at least
poor things.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
So at least with this, it's like you even get the little teaser in the mid credits, like, don't worry, we shot things. It's not, you're not going to have to wait as long.
Totally. I was noticing in the chat that Leonard Kim, who is probably as big of a TV lover as I am, has missed this altogether. And it happens to me sometimes, Leonard Kim, where there's like just a TV phenomenon that you just miss. Of course, if you're watching as much television as we do, we hit most of the things, but sometimes you miss them. I do think you should watch this because I think that the first season more than holds up. It's amazing. The second season is also excellent. You could catch up in time for the next one. When you ask the timeline on over the course of how many days, I'm actually not certain. It depends on how many games there are.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say it's once you're in the games, it's like a game a day. But the first 2 episodes, which are not in the games, I think go over a series of weeks.
So maybe? I want to say like once you're in it, a week, but before that, a month?
Well, because they say so there's a group of guys trying to get to them, and they're like, we have at most 5 days to get to these people.
Yeah. Totally.
So, speaking of games, there's already some speculation on what games we will see in season 3. These theories, I pulled these theories from an article on Den of Geek, but they seem to primarily come from when they're in their like holding cell area, there's different like stick figure people depicted doing certain games, and people are pulling from that this might be an example of what we might see. One of them is monkey bars. Apparently you see a character doing monkey bars on that. And so they're speculating there might be a situation like tug of war where either you have to hold for a long time or maybe you have to do a lot of monkey bars. Like
the person on the end has to hold for the longest as everybody else gets up or something.
Something like that.
Everybody holds and whoever drops
to their death kind of a thing. The other one, again, pulled from some imagery in the background, chess or checkers.
Oh my God, monkey bars would be my actual hell.
Yeah. Chess or checkers, of course, similar. According to the fan theories, this is from the Den of Geek article. According to fan theories, this version of chess would likely involve the players stepping in as pieces, with Jihan in charge of moving one group across the board, while the front man, who was player 1 this season, controlling the other group.
That would be similar to when they did Battleship, which obviously in season 1 was really interesting to see but that is the most strategic game that they did play, and chess would be the most strategic. And to me, based on what you were pointing out earlier, DJ, I have to say I prefer there to be less strategy involved. I think it's like the point is it could be anybody. In some strategy like tug of war where they're like, if you let go, things like that, where you're outsmarting the system is cool. But I would much rather watch them play checkers than chess.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then the last one, this is when we see the tease. We see a tease of, there's the iconic robot girl doll. We see a tease of also robot boy doll, and some red light, green light. Obviously they played red light, green light, but apparently there's a game called Dong Dong Day Mun. And the game involves two kids forming an arch while other kids form a line and run underneath them as they sing a nursery rhyme of the same name. Once the song stops, the arch comes down and anyone caught in the arms is out.
Just like musical chairs.
Well, and they already had kind of the merry-go-round go in the room thing was very musical chairs adjacent.
But are you thinking we're gonna go back to playing games?
Well, I think because we see the two robots and we see them. I think we do. I think we do.
Who?
Whoever's left.
The people who stay. Wow.
Yeah, whoever's left, which is a much smaller group at this point.
And like they don't even address it.
Yeah.
They don't even address what's happened. They just come in like our next game.
Yeah. Cool. What a fun, cool time.
Okay.
Yeah. What a fun. It's I think this is a really good show. I think it touches on it has a real keen eye to our culture and where it's at. I will say I do find it incredibly bleak that
it is
they're
very bleak,
not just the show, but I think it's bleak in our world that a response to the success of Squid Game is we have two reality competition shows we have the Squid Games, the challenge, and we have Beast Games, whatever Mr. Beast's version of Squid Games is. We have two shows that looked at this dystopian nightmare and were like, what if a reality show? That sucks. To me, that's some really bleak things about our culture.
Man, I'm so with you. I just not one thing when I watched this first season of me was like, we should play that for money.
Yeah, right. Of course, in the real world, people are dying. They're not dying in this game, but it's like that's not. It's like when Elon Musk is like, "What if cars looked like the stuff in Blade Runner?" It's like that's a dystopia, right? That's not. Or like all the people are like, "Oh, Ready Player One." No, no. We don't want that. We want to avoid that. Please and thank you.
It's so difficult when you feel so out of touch with the rest of the okay, can't stop bringing it back to the fires. But while we were here, I told you, DJ, I look out the window and there's a fire right there. I'm like, what is it?
Yeah.
Finally, they just announced that somebody lit somebody's food truck on fire.
Cool.
And that's what I was looking at.
Cool. Very cool.
Like, it reminds me that I can't try to understand everybody.
Yeah.
Because if you are doing things like that, if you're voting to stay in Squid Game, if you are watching Squid Game and then you decide we should have a reality show about this, and that's what we should do, or if you are looking and you are lighting a truck on fire because you want to watch it burn, some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
I cannot understand where you're coming from. I just can't.
Well, we're going to end on this question from the Discord from Jake Hefner. What would it take for you to compete in a real life Squid Game?
They would have to have my siblings, my niece. Like they would have to have somebody they would have to be holding on to them, and I would have to really believe they were going to let them go if I won.
I could see a reality where I could be desperate, like you hit, because that's the shitty thing about, and I think people may not appreciate enough. We like to treat being poor as a moral failing. That's something our culture loves. America loves to do that, and it just could be a series of bad breaks. You could just hit a bad run, and guess what? You're poor enough that somebody's like, yeah, do this Squid Game thing. You're like, all right, because again, you don't know going in that it's a death game. So I could see like I had a few bad breaks. I'm really desperate. I'm like, all right, I'll do this. And then people start dying. And then the thing that sucks, and I guess that's why it was so brutal to me, is I'm voting out. Never mind. I didn't know this was a death game. Get me out. And now I'm stuck because enough people don't see that as a problem. I find that relatable. I find that relatable because enough people
I do too.
Voted for a thing, and now you're stuck with the thing.
Games. Like if they pitched this to me, even if I didn't know it was death,
yeah,
I don't like to play games, and I'm not very good at games. So, and you don't know what you're playing, so I just don't think that I would be interested in this.
Yeah. I
would be like, I'll go back to bartending before I go sign up for these games to,
Yeah.
But I hear you. So I think it is relatable though, DJ, because a lot of people, who, especially if you're a gambler, and they're like, if you come and if you win so much money.
Yeah.
Obviously, you would just say yes.
Yeah. Well, and they again, another really, I was actually really surprised at how long it took us to get to the games, but I think that time was incredibly well spent, because you see the guy that recruits them, and he starts going up to these poor people and like, do you want bread or do you want a lottery ticket? And then after, whoever takes bread or lottery tickets, he just goes and stomps on all the bread. He just, you know what I mean? And this idea of like the type of not only people but cultural instincts you're preying upon. Yeah, man. It just bums me out that it feels like we're not getting the right I think this show's throwing out some pretty smart lessons, and it feels like we're missing them. we're straight missing them.
Would you have put this in one of your top shows of the year?
Yeah.
If we had recorded, yeah, me too.
I think because the way you and I did it is we both picked a top 5, so I don't know if it would have hit my top 5, but it's definitely my top 10.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that going in. I'm like, I remember liking season 1 a lot, but season 2, it's been a long time. And then by the time you get to the end, like, no, this show's on it, man. This show's like really so smart. Good. Yeah, it's really tight.
Characters are so good. The performers are so good. The dialogue, the plot, it's just all really, really good and elevated. It's so good.
Yeah. They're doing smart stuff. It's a smart show. Check it out if you haven't.
So interesting.
Well, and that's another. And aesthetically, there's a reason that little robot girl's iconic. There's a reason the set's iconic. There's a reason the people in the suits are iconic. I had assets. I didn't pull any of them up. There's a reason these dudes are iconic. Like it's just everything on the show is just really smart. Even I was kind of suckered in, like, we're introduced to a version of this costume that's black with like the pink accent, and I'm like, that does look cool. That does. I'm not gonna lie, that looks cool.
We didn't even talk about the girl who is in one of those. Did we speak about her much?
We didn't, and I think that would be the one element that does feel like something that we could have put a button on before
I'm so interested on like where they're gonna go.
Yeah,
and with the kid situation.
Well, because we see, I presume what we're supposed to understand is we see her, there's a guy that she knows outside of work. Oh my God, that little child. Roxy, having a kid just changes the way you view.
I'm sure even having a niece has totally like shifted.
You're like, I see that little girl, and you're like, I would take a bullet for that little girl. That girl's father. And we see what we presume is the woman that knows him outside of work shoot him. But I do think we're going to walk that back.
I do too.
I think there's going to be some, there's no way that we see a person on the inside and that doesn't play out.
Yeah.
Somehow. Although I do like that element, because I don't think we had that last season where it's like, by the way, here's how that part works. In case you were wondering.
She tries to take his kid because she had her kid taken.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's good. Well, if you really want to get that, yeah, maybe. But anyway, Roxy, where can the kids find what you're working on?
Everywhere at Roxy Stryer. I'm not working on much right now other than staying alive. So send thoughts and love. Yeah,
you did some posts about how people can help and stuff like that, and how you're trying to help. So pay attention to that stuff. More of that stuff will be coming out soon. And thanks to everybody that supports this show. Couldn't do it without you. Everybody on the Patreon. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash everywhere that matters, including my own personal channel. Coming up is another episode of Krypton Academy, so stay tuned for that. And thank you, and we'll see you all next time.